out is 7:30 p.m. on ABC. That is number 10 Notre Dame at number 25 Louisville. And for me, Dalton, the storyline is, can Notre Dame keep this energy up, man? Their schedule, I don't know who was making their schedule. It is brutal, man. They played in week 0, and they haven't had a bye week yet. So they're one of 2 Power 5 teams right now that has already played 6 games. They've already played half their season already, the other one being Vanderbilt. Not only has Notre Dame played 6 straight games without a bye week, they also have played 2 physically and emotionally draining games against Ohio State and against Duke. Both those games came down to the wire. Now you got a third top 25 team in as many weeks in Louisville, and you're on the road against Louisville. And this could be one of the biggest games Louisville's had in a long time, man. Louisville right now, first 5-0 start in a decade since Teddy Bridgewater was their quarterback. This is the first time Louisville is 5-0. Jeff Brom, the new head coach there, man, he's looking for a statement victory. So Notre Dame, man, this is a brutal schedule. And they're not even off next week either. They got USC next week. So they got 4 top 25 teams in a row playing their 7th game of the season next week, when next week, or 8th game of the season, next week, when a lot of teams are playing their 6th games next week. So they're basically 2 games ahead of almost everyone else in the country right now. So yeah, man, my biggest storyline for me is just, can Notre Dame keep the energy up week after week against quality opponent after quality opponent, man?
Well, part of being at Notre Dame is being in the spotlight, right? They have their own TV deal all to themselves, and they get ranked higher sometimes than they should. And look, this Louisville game at the beginning of the year was not supposed to be a ranked game. Louisville last year wasn't very good at all. And this year they've kind of, 5-0, they've kind of bounced back, and they've earned it. They've earned their 5-0. But Notre Dame, they still have, number 10 still sounds right to me, right? And even despite, Duke's a really good team. Ohio State's obviously really good. They should have won that game. The thing I think carrying Notre Dame right now, is now that they've lost already a big game, Notre Dame, without being in a conference and a conference title and all that, and you mentioned it with LSU before, teams with 2 losses don't get in the playoff.
Yeah.
The urgency factor for Notre Dame is, we have to win.
Yeah.
We blew our margin for error early, and Marcus Freeman at the forefront of that with everything that happened at the end against Ohio State. But you sit there and look at a schedule like this and a win potentially against a ranked Louisville team on the road, and you go, there's plenty to build here. There's plenty to put on this resume between Louisville and USC, and I believe they play North Carolina later in the year.
I believe so. I know they play Clemson, so they got
there's an at Clemson in there. You're right.
North Carolina though. So
okay, not North Carolina. Still brutal at Clemson.
Yeah,
USC next week. And even the easiest game of the bunch against Navy, that first game you mentioned, that was in Ireland. Mm-hmm. So they've got a trip to Ireland. They've got the Ohio State heartbreak. They've got last week with Duke already on the table. Now you got another ranked road game. I mean, it's to be in the spotlight sometimes is a curse, man.
Dude, they now that you mentioned, that's a great point. NFL teams, whenever they make a team play in London or Germany or wherever, they always have a bye week the next week because you have to recover from that massive time zone. Like we said, Notre Dame has already played 6 games back to back, even though they went to Ireland, and now they got Ohio State, Duke, Louisville, USC. The schedule makers, man, were not kind to the Fighting Irish this year. That's a great point you made, man, because I totally forgot about that. It's like, yeah, they went to Ireland and still had to play a game the next week. So it's insane what the Fighting Irish have had to go through so far this season, man.
Yeah, big time. Getting to this game, though, obviously we're going to have the USC game. Pretty good chance we'll have the at Clemson game as long as Clemson keeps themselves together. This game, it's another one like last week. I think maybe even to a lesser, although Duke played, their defense especially played incredibly well last week. It's another game I do think with the urgency high, even though it's on the road and everything, I do think Notre Dame is pretty clearly the better team here.
Yeah.
Louisville's 5-0. They've earned it. There's nothing to take away from that. But you look at kind of what they've done. They beat Georgia Tech by 5. They beat Indiana by 7. They beat NC State last week 13-10 with only 20 yards rushing on their side. They're winning, but anytime you put the tape on, right? We've done it for just about every team today. you look for something exceptional.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, what makes this thing go right? When you look at any team, and we look Notre Dame the same way. We've rolled through it for 3 weeks in a row now. Defensive line, front seven, they cover well. Estime is a monster. I think still second in the country in rushing grade. Physical. Joe Alt is going top 10 in the draft. Hartman keeps it together, although in big games, it's still kind of to be decided. It's not great, but he got him through last week, the big run on 4th and 16, all that. But I look at Louisville, I can't find anything they do exceptional.
Mm-hmm.
They're winning games, but there's nothing that jumps out at you. Like Jack Plummer sometimes makes really good throws. He's kind of a gunslinger. Under pressure, it's a mess. He's at 88.2 passing grade when clean, and just over 35 when pressured. Like off platform, Jack Plummer doesn't throw the best balls. He's really got to be kept clean. My first concern, if I'm Louisville, is how do we block these two guys in the middle?
Yeah,
between Howard Cross and Riley Mills. They're two of the 10 best pass rushing D tackles in the country. That's the first thing, because the first thing for Louisville is keeping Jack Plummer protected so he can step into these throws, because he gets a little bit shaky when the heat is on.
Mm-hmm.
He's throwing off his back foot, throwing off platform, and he doesn't have the arm talent to make throws like that. When we talk about Williams and Sanders and Penix and some of these guys who have freak arm talent who can do those things, Jack Plummer's not one of those guys. Now, he's a gunslinger. He can throw the ball down the field for sure. He's got 11 big-time throws on the year. He's also got 6 interceptions. So he takes his chances. Last week, NC State, like I said, Louisville only ran for 20 yards. When you can't run the ball like on an NC State or some of these other teams, I'm not sure how I can expect you to run the ball against Notre Dame, right? Duke last week, Riley Leonard took off running. Jack Plummer's not Riley Leonard.
Yeah.
So I'm digging through the tape and I'm going, this is a solid team. This is a team, that's a little bit better than Georgia Tech and NC State. And they're probably something like an 8-win team, But the problem, if I think you're an 8-win team and you're already 5-0, there's always a team or two. Kansas, this happened to last year. They get the reality check. And I have a feeling Louisville's the team this week. That Notre Dame, my only answers really for Louisville winning this game, Jack Plummer's got to be safer with the football. Being the gunslinger is cool. It's part of what makes him productive. But this is not a game where you can mess around throwing the ball into a ton of tight windows, right? Kyle McCord got away with 1 or 2 against them, but generally Kyle McCord played really safe football. Plummer's this is gonna take the game of his life, man. I'm telling you, they have to run the ball. If they only run for 20 yards on Notre Dame, it's over. Yeah. And I think one bit of hope is their pass rush. It's not a deep pass rush, but when you look at their 2 edge guys, Ashton Gelati leads the nation in pressures right now, and Stephen Herron is in the top 15 in pressures.
Mm-hmm.
It's not a deep pass rush. But those 2 guys out there, we've talked about Hartman under pressure too. You get to Hartman, you've got a similar dynamic as Plummer, where he doesn't have the most arm talent on the planet. He's not going to make off-platform throws. That's really Louisville's one hope, I think, is they got to drag this game out a little bit. They can't have turnovers, and the problem with the pass rush and only having 2 guys really that rush the passer like that, you've got Alton Fisher on the other side.
Yeah.
So it's not fun at all trying to rush the passer against Notre Dame. Very few teams, Ohio State did it, but they're Ohio State. They're loaded. Louisville's not loaded like that. I think Duke was more physical than I thought they would be. I'm not sure Louisville's that physical.
Yeah, I think that's the problem too. I think Joel's been fantastic. Blake Fisher's been a little up and down so far this season. Maybe that could be an area of weakness for Notre Dame, that you get pressure off the right side from Blake Fisher. But yeah, man, my thing that I'm looking for is really which running back is going to have more success, because both offenses are really kind of built around the running backs. Audric Estime has been fantastic this year for Notre Dame. You see right there, leads the country in rushing yards, leads the country in rushing yards after contact, leads Power 5 running backs in overall grade this season. He has been fantastic. If you're asking me to give out the Doak Walker Award, it probably is going to Audric Estime right now. He has been phenomenal so far this season. Jawar Jordan, on the other side for Louisville, 7th in the Power 5 in rushing yards, 4th in the Power 5 in yards per carry, nearly 8 yards per carry. Great receiving back, too. Has the 3rd most receiving yards in the Power 5. Both of them are dominant running backs, and both of them bring something different to the table. Audric Estime is a 227-pound back. He is a bruiser, man. He is like kind of like Jerome Bettis went to Notre Dame all the way back in the day in the 90s. Not comparing him to the bus, but he's kind of like that, where it's just like you hand him the ball, A gap, B gap. He is bouncing off tacklers. He's going to grind out yards the hard way, and he's made a living doing that. Jawar Jordan, on the other side, is 185 pounds. He is 40 pounds lighter than Audric Estime, and he wins by getting out in space, quickness, agility, explosiveness. So 2 really dominant running backs, and I think Jordan might be able to have a little bit more success even with the 2 great defensive tackles that Notre Dame has, because they're going to get him out on the edge more rather than, if it was an Audric Estime type back going up against those 2 D tackles, I'd say, okay, that's probably not going to work too well for you. But Jordan, I think, is going to be able to get out in space. But both teams as well have done a really good job of stopping the run. Notre Dame right now, 5th in the Power 5 with a 90.3 run defense grade. Louisville tied for 8th in the Power 5, averaging about 3.3 yards per run attempt so far this season. So both defenses have done a really good job of stopping the run, and I think ultimately this game could basically come down to which running back has the bigger day, because both offenses really rely on Estime and Jawar Jordan. They're the 2, I would say they're the 2 best players besides Joe Alt. They're the 2 best players probably on each of these teams, is Jawar Jordan and Audric Estime. So they're the 2 weapons that they rely on the most, and I think they're gonna really try to carry both their teams to victory in this one. But ultimately, Dalton, who do you have coming out on top in this Saturday night game in Louisville?
I think Estime and the Irish have the advantage in that matchup. I think the level of physicality, I don't think Louisville's ready for this level of physicality. I know we hinted at it with Duke last week, and they were ready. Duke's got real size and real toughness to their team, starting with the quarterback and working all the way around. Louisville, they get beat up inside sometimes. They're smaller than Duke, and I think they're going to have a lot of problems. I wouldn't be shocked. I wouldn't be shocked if Estime ground his way for like 200 yards in this game. Right. It's Louisville. They're small. Sometimes that can work to your advantage, but Notre Dame, you look at, they've seen some things already, right? You've seen Marvin Harrison and Ibuka. Then they've seen like the toughness of Duke. Right, it's Louisville has some speed, but they don't have the speed like USC next week. That's going to threaten Notre Dame like that. I don't think they'll get some points. They're at home. They'll their offense. They'll get vertical if Plummer makes some brave throws and it works. But all across the board, I think there's too much size here for Notre Dame. There's a mismatch here to me with Estime. The running game, Louisville struggled to stop the run, especially against Boston College. There's Boston College again running it up on somebody. I think Notre Dame's still one of the 10 best teams in the country. I think number 10 is about right. New Year's 6, all that stuff. We'll get into the USC game next week, but it just comes down to me where I go, Louisville's a solid football team that's beat on some softer football teams, right? Indiana's not good, and they only beat them by 7. Georgia Tech's not great, won by 5. NC State last week with Louisville, that's probably pretty comparable. And Notre Dame beat NC State by 21. So if I'm just going kind of the transitive thing there's that. But I just think it's a level – I think it's a level of football Louisville's not ready to play yet. I'm going to take Notre Dame 42-24. Maybe that's a little widespread on the road. I could be wrong, but and maybe they won't even hit. Maybe not 42. Let me me fix that. Let me go like 35-24 because this game is going to be more about Notre Dame just being the more physical team. I if I was throwing a bold prediction out there, let me take Estime for 200 yards and Notre Dame for the win, and then we'll talk the big one next week with Notre Dame and see if they can. That's a level of speed that's challenging what they got going on out there. But Louisville, look, they're a solid team. I don't think they're on this level. I think they're the team this week that and there's certain ones. Look, Missouri's in that low 20s, Kentucky's number 20. It's kind of a thing. It's like, who wants to prove themselves? I think Louisville gets the reality check.
Yeah, I agree, man. I got Notre Dame. I got in a little bit closer. I have 31-24. But like you said, man, Notre Dame, the way they win games is basically by trying to make you scream uncle, basically. So they're going to out-physical you as much as they can, man. And I think the Fighting Irish, this is kind of a mismatch. I don't think Louisville, like you said, can match them physically. So